The Buffs looking to bounce back from just 3 wins, only one in Big 12 play for 2026, and they will do it with a slew of new players. Although that's become the norm in college football. Of course, Colorado was one of the first to do it under Deion Sanders way back in 2023. We got Kevin Borba here from Athlon Sports, and of course, you can catch him on a regular basis, Locked on Buffs, with Kevin and his Colorado podcast right there. Kevin, appreciate you jumping on. How you doing?
Thanks for having me. Yeah, I'm doing good. Excited for college football to come back already.
Yeah, for sure. And have we had an announced start to spring practice yet for Colorado?
Colorado starts in about 12-ish days, I think, at the time.
Okay.
So the time we're recording, 12 days, yeah.
There we go. This is a good time to get started. 43 new players through the transfer portal. That doesn't even account the recruiting class that seems to get discarded to a certain extent. For a lot of teams, 36 left. So obviously we would be here for hours sorting through all those players. But in regards to key additions and then also some guys that are going to be missed, who do you think really stands out?
They're going to be starting Julian Lewis. He was the 5-star freshman that sort of, I would say they botched his eligibility stuff last year in a way, just because of how they played him a game too early. They played him, I think it was the second game of the year for like 2 series. And then all of a sudden down the stretch when they benched him, they realized like, oh, shoot, we may have messed up his red shirt. So there is that sort of fun thing. They ended up, I don't think he played the last game. I think it was Ryan Staub. But he sat behind Caden Salter, who was supposed to be a nice bridge quarterback for Colorado. And instead, I think he was just a missed investment, failed sort of, I guess, opportunity or missed opportunity there in Boulder. They just didn't adapt their offense well enough to him. Behind Julian Lewis is Isaac Wilson, who was or is the younger brother of NFL quarterback Zach Wilson. Started a few games for Utah. Roughly no one in that quarterback room is back. I think Ryan Staub's now at Tennessee. Caden Salter's pursuing professional football. I'm not sure. Colton Allen, I'm not sure what happened to him, but I know Dominique Ponder is back. So it's going to look a little bit different. They're handing the reins over to Julian Lewis. Running back wise, the running back room got really interesting for Colorado. They haven't ran the ball well, roughly at all, under Deion Sanders. They don't have a single 100-yard rusher in a game. They don't have a single person who's rushed for 400 yards in a season in his tenure in Boulder. And so that'll probably change with Brendan Marion, the new offensive coordinator. He's bringing in what's called the go-go offense, which uses 2 running backs at a time. Colorado lost Draylon Miller, who was kind of like a wide receiver running back hybrid, and they lost Cam Michael as well. And they're bringing in Damian Henderson, who was one of Brendan Marion's better running backs at Sac State. They're also bringing in a former 4-star recruit from Alabama, and Richard Young, who I'm pretty excited about to see him because he's massive. I think he's like 5'11", almost 6 foot, 215 pounds. So he's built like he's a massive human. So he's an exciting player to see over there. Wide receiver wise, Colorado, I thought they would be fine, but they ended up sort of revamping their entire wide receiver room. They lost Omarion Miller to Arizona State. He's going to be someone they play against this year. He was their best receiver. I would say he's probably a top 5 wide receiver in college football. And so they went out and got Danny Scudero from San Jose State. He led college football in receiving yards this past season. They got DeAndre Moore from Texas, who was consistently, I would say, the 2nd or 3rd best receiver on Texas's rosters over the past couple of years. And I think he'll have a chance to sort of be the guy for the first time in his career. And then they also landed Cam Perry from Miami of Ohio, who is an exciting sort of prospect there. And you'll notice this sort of trend with, I would say, Colorado skill positions. They brought in Ernest Campbell from Sac State. He was their leading wide receiver, played under Brendan Marion this past year. He also runs track. So he's running track right now for Colorado. He's probably one of the fastest guys in the country. So wide receiver room is looking brand new. Tight end will be the same at Zach Atkins, who we have here on the list. He's probably going to be actually used this year, which is exciting because he's probably one of the better pass catching tight ends in the Big 12. It's just they couldn't figure out a way to get him the ball last year all too much. So I think he'll have a big year as well. And then the offensive line, I thought would be a strength. And I still think it can be a strength, but you lose Jordan Seaton to LSU. So you're bringing in a handful of guys. Taj White from Rutgers is a name I'd look out for at left tackle. Yaya Atia is a guy that was sort of a plug and play guy. I think he probably played all 5 offensive line positions last year and also played some tight end because he's so versatile. So they have a brand new offensive line. Offensively, they're going to look really different. I think they're going to put up more points. They're going to run the ball better. And Julian Lewis is going to have a lot of weapons around him.
Colorado at the Voice of College Football, presented by FanDuel. Appreciate you being here to check things out and leave those comments and questions down below. Kevin Borb is here to break down Colorado for us with just a couple weeks, minus a few weeks until spring practice there in Boulder. Catch Kevin's daily podcast, Locked on Buffs. So a few follow-ups before we get to the defense. Julian Lewis, as we saw there with the stats rundown, no INTs for a young quarterback in 94 attempts is pretty impressive. And obviously there was a lot of hype with him coming out of high school. Your thoughts about his play and what he needs to work on, and whether there's obviously hope there if they are pretty much handing him the job.
Yeah, I think Julian Lewis, I would say after the spring game last year and after even the game against Delaware where he played there was like 2 series, he didn't look ready to me. He skipped his senior year of high school to go to Colorado last year, and I think he was doing that with the impression he was going to start. And it didn't work out in that way, and it was probably for the best. And quite frankly, I think sitting behind Caden Salter and then getting the chance to start at the end of the year and play at the end of the year, we saw him grow. He's someone who I think could blossom into a top quarterback in the Big 12. He's someone who I think could blossom into a top 10 quarterback in college football. So he protected the football well. He didn't really have the best play calling. He didn't have the best playmakers around him. His offensive line had fallen apart by the time he took over. So I think although his stats are like the most exciting, right? I think he threw for like 4 touchdowns or something along those lines, where it was like 4 touchdowns, 0 interceptions, completed nearly 60% of his passes, if I'm remembering correctly. They weren't like, oh my gosh, this kid's amazing, but it showed us enough because he was supposed to be getting ready for high school prom, not starting against a Division I FBS Power 4 program. So I'm excited to see what he does with a full spring as a starter. I think his dad ultimately deleted this tweet, but there was a tweet at one point where his father sort of indicated that they weren't expecting Caden Salter to sort of be a part of Colorado, and then all of a sudden he was. And that sort of is a testament to the interior struggles that Colorado had this past year. There's some staff members who are no longer a part of the program, and I think they facilitated that confusion, to say the least. But with a full year to prepare, to get used to these guys, to get used to this offense, I think Julian Lewis could be really good next year.
Obviously, this was a fun offense to watch when Shadur Sanders was running the show and Deion Sanders first stepped on campus. But you mentioned the run game and how futile it's been. But for people that aren't invested in the program and are just simply looking for entertainment, it's been a great offense to watch. Again, going back 2 seasons to Shadur Sanders, but needing a running game, does Deion Sanders ever address that? Is he asked about just the futility of the run game? And when you see that Michael Welch led the team with 384 yards, Dallin Hayden obviously off to Memphis, he was in that 300-yard range. But you mentioned Richard Young coming in from Alabama. He was a top recruit a few years ago. That they need to balance this out to be a factor.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that we'll see change is just we're no longer seeing an offense that I think Deion Sanders is heavily involved with. And there's nothing wrong with that. I just think he was having his coordinators call an offense that he was familiar with or liked, which featured throwing the ball a lot. They talked about running the ball a ton last year. They made it seem like they were going to run the ball down people's throats, and then they ended up not. And with Brendan Marion, if you look at the Sac State stats from a year ago, I think it's 4 running backs with 50 or more carries, right? I don't even know if Colorado had 2 running backs with 50 or more carries at times. Like, it just felt like Colorado was just pulling names out of a hat when they were deciding who would run the ball. It felt like they had no rhyme or reason to when they would run the ball. You would see them run the ball in the first quarter and then not go back to it like until midway through the second quarter. Like, it was just no balance, no flow. And Brendan Marion is all about establishing the run to open up the pass. And so Colorado is going to be a lot more physical. And whether people are ready for it or not, they're going to be running the ball, which will be a change from what we've seen under the Deion Sanders regime.
As you mentioned, DeAndre Moore, 77 catches, 11 touchdowns in 2 seasons at Texas. Hakeem Williams is a name that I'm familiar with from his days at Florida State, as he was a big recruit, never really panned out. Notice he had 9 catches last year. Do you expect him to be in the running to get some reps?
I think he has a chance because the wide receivers coach really likes him. He started a couple games last year, which kind of surprised me because he didn't really do anything that stood out to me. Like you said, at Florida State, he was sort of I remember he had one big touchdown catch at Florida State, and that was sort of like the moment that all Florida State fans held on to. And I think that was the moment that all Colorado fans were like, if we could just do this, like he will be good. The problem is he gets banged up a lot, and that's sort of continued to plague him. And I don't know. I think Colorado really overloaded at wide receiver. I think it's going to be difficult to really feed. I would say they have about 7 guys who could be in the rotation, and that's just not how it works out, right? I think Brendan Marion's offense will see about 4 to 5 guys consistently get the ball, and one of those guys is going to be the tight end. So I would say there's 4 wide receiver spots that are quote unquote up for grabs. I think those are going to be claimed by DeAndre Moore, Danny Scudero, Cam Perry, maybe Ernest Campbell a little bit. Like Hakeem Williams has a long way to go, right? He has yet to prove he could be a consistent playmaker, and until he does, I don't really see what his future or what his fit is in this offense. Excuse me.
And the offensive line, you went through some of the names that are coming on campus. I see schools like Ohio State, Georgia, Houston in that transfer portal rundown. And we know how atrocious this offensive line was when Deion Sanders first took over. But as you mentioned, maybe it didn't turn out to be as good of an offensive line as it was expected to be last year, but at least they have obviously made it a concerted effort to improve where they needed to.
Yeah, no, they marginally improved last year. I wouldn't say the numbers truly support that because they still didn't have the run blocking offense that they needed, but they protected the quarterback at a higher clip. Again, not the most impressive numbers, but you look at who they brought in, like Leon Bell from Cal. He started a lot of games. Demetrius Hunter from Houston he's going to be the starting center for them. He started a lot of games. Bo Hughley from Georgia started some games at tackle. So they're bringing in a lot of experience. They're bringing in some proven guys. And I think the mixture of portal additions combined with the guys that they're bringing back Larry Johnson, who transferred in from Tennessee before last year. He started all year at right tackle, and he was pretty solid. Yaya Ati is a name I mentioned earlier. He was pretty decent as well. And so they're going to have to mix and match again. I think they brought in a lot of offensive linemen for a reason. I think they have to find the right combination. And I said this on my show a lot, and I took a lot of heat for this, but it is what it is. Jordan Seaton was a really good pass protector. He's probably one of the best pass blocking offensive linemen in college football. That being said, he wasn't very good in the run blocking game, and Colorado's offense needs guys who could do well in the run blocking game. So I'm not saying he's not a loss, but Colorado will survive without him.